Imagine you have a small cozy restaurant somewhere in the countryside. Every day you need to get fresh food for your guests, but how to do that? Spending your days running to the supermarket is not an option. The solution? Get it delivered. At this point, Metro's delivery service comes in, or more precisely, the delivery by one of our FSD specialist companies. And that's what this episode of More Podcast is all about. So start the engine, put it in gear, step on the gas, let's go. The expansion of food service distribution for the hospitality industry is a key growth driver in our SCORE strategy. Not only Metro's own delivery business, but also our specialized FSD companies are on a growth path and play an important role in this context. We want to take a closer look at classic fine food, R-Express, Pro, Aviludo, JHB and Caterite. We explain how these companies differ and what Metro's own delivery can learn from them. So stay tuned and find out more about the exciting developments of our FSD companies in this freshly delivered episode of More Podcast, Wholesale to the Max. A warm welcome to all of you, dear colleagues. I am Bernd.Rodde from Internal Communications at Metro AG and responsible for this podcast about Metro's SCORE strategy. My guest today knows our FSD companies like no one else at Metro. In 2019, he joined the company, and for the past few years, he has been responsible for the integration and steering of our FSD specialist. I warmly welcome our Vice President FSD Portfolio Management, Julius Osthues. Hello, Julius.
Hi, Bernd. Very happy to be here.
Great to have you here, Julius. I've just mentioned that you are managing our FSD companies within Metro. There's a great picture of you on United, where you are standing in front of a delivery van with a box of JHB. Does that mean that you sometimes get actively involved with the FSD companies to get to know their processes inside out?
I would say this is not part of my daily business, but when we travel and visit and discuss with our FSD companies, we always try to have some practical experience as well, because I think especially for us here in the center, and I don't speak only for myself, I think I speak for all the functions, it's important to be in the countries and, let's say, have a good sense of what they are doing in their daily business.
Yeah, absolutely. And what else your responsibilities are and how exactly you work for and with our FSD specialist, Julius, is what we want to hear from you today in this episode of More Podcast. We also want to learn more about what these companies have in common, what makes them different, and what potential they offer for the growth of Metro's delivery business. But that's not all, Julius. We also want to know what you think of our fundamentals and how they help you in your day-to-day business. And at the end of the episode, we are particularly excited about your sound souvenir. First of all, I would like to talk about the importance of the FSD companies for Metro and the growth of our delivery business, because in the last financial year, Metro generated around 8 billion euros in sales in the FSD segment. Julius, how much of that comes from our FSD specialist companies?
It's 2.2 billion if you aggregate it across all the FSD portfolio companies. So if we think about our growth in the previous years, I think we really look back on a really good performance. So the entire portfolio, if you aggregate all the sales, grew by 6% last year and 15% the year before. And that is like for like. So that excludes all the acquisitions that we did. If you put this on top, we grew significantly more. And hypothetically, if you would combine the entire portfolio, it would be the fourth biggest Metro country. So after France, Germany, and Russia.
Let's take a closer look at each of the FSD specialists. To do that, I think maybe it's helpful to look at the respective customer groups they serve. Basically, as far as I know, we can divide our FSD companies and Metro Delivery into three customer segments: casual dining, fine dining, and organized HoReCa, with Metro Delivery probably falling into the casual dining category, right, Julius?
Yeah, that's right. So if I look at the FSD HoReCa landscape, I think there's one important conclusion, and it's that there's not just one HoReCa customer. It makes a difference whether you cater to a burger truck or a Michelin star restaurant. And you have to set up yourself differently to serve these customers in a good way. So if you take casual dining, for example, and this is the segment that also Metro and Macro is targeting. You can think of the Italian restaurant next door, so an independent restaurateur. Also, Aviludo from our FSD portfolio is catering to this segment with around 220 million in sales last year.
And what are the characteristics of the other customer groups, fine dining and organized HoReCa in detail?
If you take fine dining, the focus is rather on premium customers. So you can imagine Michelin star restaurants, really premium gastronomy, 5-star hotels, specialty traders. And there we have classic fine foods, which is mainly operating in Asia. In total, we have 10 entities. But also in the Middle East, we recently expanded to Saudi Arabia. We are also in the UK. And this is also where our latest acquisition, Caterite, is coming from, also catering to fine dining. We also have Ronges Express operating in this fine dining segment. They are operating in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria with around 180 million in sales. And in Germany, Ronges Express is delivering to all the 10 3-star Michelin restaurants there are. I think in Germany we have around 330 Michelin star restaurants in total. Ronges Express is delivering way more than half of them. So it's really the absolute market leader in fine dining. And lastly, we also have JHB in Sweden and also operating in Finland with more than 200 million in sales. And then the last segment is organized HoReCa. And here the focus is rather on social or institutional customers, such as caterers, hospitals, universities, or also commercial chain customers, such as burger chains. And both our Pro companies in France as well as Spain are targeting those customers. And in this segment, we often are committed to contractual partnerships that can take up to 3 years. So you have contracts and in some cases even longer. And I think a fun fact is that our largest customer of Metro around the world is actually a contract caterer served by Pro France. So while we are with our common Metro Macro setup, we are really perfectly able to serve this casual dining segment, so the independent restaurateur. I think the beauty of the FSD portfolio is that this enables us to also serve other customer segments, namely the fine dining and the organized HoReCa segment.
These 3 customer segments are not only crucial for the type of delivery, but also for the assortment and market position of the FSD companies, as well as their pricing, right?
Yes. And to me, this is really super important because I'm really convinced if we want to serve our customers in the best way, we have to adjust our setup based on these customer segments. And I'll give you a few examples. Let's take the assortment first. In casual dining, you try to have a wide assortment that fits a large number of customers in your defined CTGs. In fine dining, you rather have a narrow and exclusive assortment with really premium products. And in organized HoReCa, we speak about pull assortment. That means your assortment is defined by the customer and often tendered. And there's a funny example within Pro France of apple compote, because they have 4 different SKUs of apple compote in their assortment. And if you think about the score strategy, we have SKU reduction in there, right? You would think, well, maybe you need 1, maximum 2 apple compotes. But Pro needs 4. Because if you want to play in the organized HoReCa segment, sometimes you are obliged to have more than 1 or 2 SKUs, even if it's the same product, it tastes the same, it looks the same. Because the FMCG companies, they often lobby quite well with the authorities or with contract caterers who put these tenders, and they make sure that exactly the specs of this specific apple compote comes into the tender. So if we want to play on this tender, we need to have this specific apple compote.
This is really amazing. I didn't know that apple compote plays a role in the French kitchen at all. So
for some schools, it does.
Yeah. Another crucial difference is that some companies not only buy goods to then sell them by delivery, but also process fresh product themselves or even produce them. What are the advantages of this?
If you take our most recent acquisitions, so Aviludo, JHB, Caterite, they all have what we call vertical capabilities of processing or producing meat, fish, and vegetables. JHB, for example, they generate 50% of their sales from own produced or own processed meat and fish. And this enables us to offer something unique to our customers and differentiates us from our competitors. So one key advantage is also that this increases customer loyalty or even locks in customers. JHB, for instance, they often work together with customers, such as hotel chains, to develop tailored products. So if you take, for example, a breakfast buffet, then JHB goes and develops together with the hotel a special smoked ham. And you can imagine, then they are the only one who can deliver exactly this smoked ham. And that locks in this customer.
Yeah, and that also means that they really own farms?
No, it really starts with the raw material. So JHB is not owning any farms or animals, but they get the raw material and then they do something with the raw material. So they have, for example, 4 big smokers in their production facility in Göteborg, and then they smoke it. Or they do burgers, they do sausages, they have their own recipes. And with this, they are really having unique products that they can sell to their customers. And this is also great for profitability because on comparable products, JHB did the analysis, they have a higher gross margin of up to 10%. So it's good for keeping the customer, but also for becoming more profitable. And I think, given Metro's scale and also considering our expertise in the fresh assortment, I see that vertical integration, not just for the FSD companies, but really on a global scale, is one of the biggest opportunities for us. And we can learn from the FSD companies how to succeed with it.
Yeah, so these are some considerations that Metro and Makro will also start producing fresh products by themselves?
Well, we have already some examples where Metro countries are actually processing meat and fish. But I think it's also something where the company sees value and where the company thinks we can do more. Another example is service, and I think we can agree that for all the 3 segments, service level is important. But there are differences. If you take casual dining, of course it's important, but if you think about the Italian restaurant next door, customers can more easily substitute products. So you all experienced going to an Italian restaurant, there are 40 dishes on the menu, and at one given day, 1 dish is out. It's not great, but it can happen. If you think about fine dining, if you think about a Michelin star restaurant, they publish their menu 1 month in advance. And some customers go specifically to the restaurant for 1 specific dish. And you may be the only or one of the few suppliers who distributes this specific product for this dish. So if you cannot deliver, it's not great. And then think about organized HoReCa. If you fail deliver to a school, children cannot eat. And the quantities that a school purchases, you cannot just buy them in the supermarket. So in conclusion, I think this makes clear that we have to adjust our setup to the customers that we want to serve.
What synergies there are between our FSD companies and the Metro delivery business, we will find out from you, Julius, in a moment. How well companies that are part of Metro fit with us also depends on the company's values, and that brings us to our own values, the Metro fundamentals. We want to know, Julius, what you think of them and how you apply them in your daily work. And just like in every episode of More Podcasts, we do that with our fundamentals questionnaire. So, Julius, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Then here we go with the first question. Which of the 5 fundamentals is your favorite one?
Basis and basics.
Okay, and why?
So in my time as a consultant, I would say I saw a lot of different and complex business models. And I think it's fair to say that wholesale is not one of them. And I think that's good news because I'm convinced if we get all the basics right, the job is nearly done. And coming back to the FSD companies, I think sometimes it's refreshing to see the pragmatism and the focus that these guys have.
Yeah, then the next question really fit with this one because where in your working environment do you think simplification is most needed?
That's a good question. I think Metro AG can bring a lot of structure and a high level of professionalism to the companies. That being said, we need to be very cautious that we don't pose the same requirements for a small FSD company as, for example, for Metro France and Metro Germany. So sometimes one size fits all is not the approach we should take.
Okay, and let's go a step further. What would you like to abolish because it had no impact so far?
That's an even more interesting question. I would say our existing IT governance and approval processes were not really designed with the FSD companies in mind, and this needs improvement. And I'm very confident that now with this new target operating model exercise, we will develop a better structure and setup.
Yeah, and we will come to the corporate culture of the FSD companies a little bit later, so stay tuned, dear colleagues. Next question, Julius. How do you create an open working environment where your colleagues can bring our fundamentals to life?
I'm a big believer in accountability and ownership. And I trust my team and I inspire them to really think bold and take risks.
Mm-hmm. Last question. Which 3 words best describe one Metro to you?
Okay, let's start with together. Especially for FSD companies, being part of a larger group can really make a difference. Because that's one thing that our FSD companies have that most of their competitors don't have. And a second word that comes to mind is passion. I meet a lot of people who share the love for food. I also meet a lot of people here in the company who really have a passion to serve our customers. And I truly believe that we are a company with a great purpose. And maybe the last word is celebrate, because I'm a fan of working hard, but then also taking a moment to stop and celebrate when we have achieved major milestones.
Okay, yeah. All right, Julius. Now we get a good idea of what's important to you about our fundamentals and how you deal with them. But hey, we've only scratched the surface. Of course, we want to dig a little deeper and get to know you even better, Julius. So we'll be tuning into your sound souvenir a little later on. Here's already a little teaser to keep you guessing. And again. Sounds interesting, but as always, we'll dive into what it really is and what it means for you towards the end of this episode, so stay tuned. You just mentioned that verticalization, so the in-house production and processing of fresh products, maybe also offers new potential for Metro. What other synergies can be realized through the collaboration of FSD companies with Metro?
Let me start by saying I think we're doing a lot, but we can and we must do more. I think we can, when we think about synergies, distinguish between 3 different types of synergies. Yes, the first one would be synergies between FSD companies and Metro entities in the same country. And there, the biggest synergies are in buying. If we combine our procurement volumes across different businesses and collaborate on negotiations, this is where we get the most value out of it. If you take, for example, Pro France and Metro France, or Aviludo and Macro Portugal, they are buying together or with mandates for each other. So Aviludo and Macro, last year they went to a big project to optimize their COGS, and they could achieve savings of more than 1 million euros. So it's significant in size. And then Aviludo is also producing meat in its own production for Metro Chef, and this is sold in the Macro Portugal stores. And part of Rungis Express, to give you another example, is an internal logistics company called Cool Chain Group. And this is the biggest logistic provider to Metro Germany. So they are actually doing the last mile delivery for Metro Germany to a large extent. And then there's a second bucket of synergies, which are synergies between FSD companies and other Metro entities, such as trading offices or Metro properties. If you take the trading offices, all of our companies are buying together with Rotterdam, Concarneau, Valencia. To give you here a good example and a success story, after we acquired JHB, they shifted 1,300 tons of meat, so that's around 4 million in COGS, from an external supplier to our Rotterdam trading office. Yeah? And this with significant better buying terms. So we could achieve a large saving out of this. And of course, FSD companies are also benefiting from central metro functions, such as metro properties for warehouse projects. And the third bucket is synergies across FSD companies, so among the FSD companies. And here one example is that ProApro France is supporting ProApro Spain, so the little sister, to serve the social customer segment in Spain. Because ProApro Spain, or Davigel Spain at the time, they were coming from serving the touristic hotels, but we see a huge opportunity in Spain to serve the same customers as ProApro France is serving. So social customers like caterers, universities, hospitals in Spain, and they are working together on that.
And beside the procurement and also the operational business, to what extent are the FSD companies already integrated into Metro, for example, in terms of administrative areas such as IT or finance?
So if you take purchasing, all the FSD companies are connected to the trading offices, and it's a key goal to increase collaboration and volumes. The same applies for own brands. So in your last podcast, you had Jens Bressler here, and also for the FSD companies, it's a priority to push Metro own brand sales and volumes. I would say overall integration of FSD companies in admin areas, such as IT or finance, is quite limited. Yeah. So every FSD company comes with their own legacy IT infrastructure. In the past, we didn't really change the IT landscape significantly after we acquired a company. And while FSD companies will never have the full M-Suite solutions, such as metro countries, I think there is a value in standardizing the IT landscape to make processes more efficient, benefit from lower licensing fees. And I think there is an opportunity that with a new IT target operating model, we can become better here.
Let's look beyond the actual core business models of the FSD companies. How do they differ from Metro in general, for example, in terms of corporate culture?
I would say, first of all FSD companies' corporate cultures are very much aligned with Metro's corporate culture. I believe that we share the same values and fundamentals. So if you take the fundamentals, for example, they are rolled out across all FSD companies. And when we do our due diligences for potential acquisition targets, we also evaluate cultural fit. That means we talk to the management, we talk to employees, and finally we ask ourselves if after an acquisition we could collaborate well together with the management and the employees of the company. But I think there are also some differences. While FSD companies are often very entrepreneurial and hands-on, so Metro operations are more structured in their processes and systems. And our ambition should always be to draw the best out of both worlds. So I believe taking both together, we can learn a lot from each other.
And is there a big difference between an organization that is family-owned, perhaps even still managed by the founder, or one that belongs to a large company, such as an investment company, for example?
I think there are important differences. I think there are even 3 different cases with regards to ownership. So one is family-owned, second is large corporations, as you mentioned. But there's a third one where we buy or acquire businesses from private equity companies. And let's take the first. If we acquire a company that is family-owned, such as Aviludo or Caterite, then there's a large focus during the transaction on what will happen to the business. So often the business is the lifetime work of the founder, and they really want to make sure that the business and the employees are taken good care of. And an important question for us is also, so what will happen to the owner? Will she or he stay with the business? And if so, in what role? And does this person hold crucial customer or supplier relationship? This is all quite crucial for our due diligence. And if we take both ProApro businesses, they were both acquired from large corporations. And the structures in those companies are often similar to our structure, and the management is also used to work with a corporate shareholder. And in both cases, family owned or corporate owned, what is super crucial is that the sale might come as a big surprise to the employees. And then there needs to be a strong focus from day one on the communication. Yeah? So it's super important that you communicate well and take employees and the management with you on the journey. This is different if the business is owned by a private equity fund. Then the average holding period, I think, is around 5 years. So everyone expects that the business is sold at one point. And one particular thing to watch out here is that if a business is owned by a private equity fund, they are very good in optimizing the business for cash. So key part of the due diligence is to assess how sustainable the business and its financial situation is going forward.
Julius, let's talk about your work in connection with the FSD companies. Actually, you're not so much responsible for their operational business or the daily business, because your work starts well in advance of the acquisition and the following integration into Metro, as you have already described a little bit. When you're looking for food delivery companies that might be a good fit for us, what criteria do you use beside the corporate culture?
We have a structured selection process, and we look at a couple of different dimensions. One is the scope of the business. So is the target an FSD player first? Is the focus on wholesale? Does the customer focus on HoReCa? If, for example, the focus of the business is on retail, it's not for us. Second dimension is market. So we look at the overall attractiveness of the market, the growth potential. How's the competitive landscape, and maybe also Metro in an existing country placed in this competitive setup. And then a very important dimension is also the strategic and business model fit. So we look if it fits into one of our 3 customer segments, what role does it play there, and does it contribute to our strategic vision and ambition. And of course, also the financial profile is super important. So all the investments that we do need to be attractive in terms of net present value. It needs to contribute to our sales, profitability, and cash generation. And lastly, also transaction structure is an important dimension for us. So we always want to go for majority ownership of the business, preferably 100%. For all the businesses that we have today in our portfolio, Metro AG is the 100% owner, and we try to avoid complex ownership structures. So in conclusion, we have a structured selection process, but every acquisition is really a case-by-case thing, and we have to look at it case by case.
And are there some countries which are particularly in focus?
Our main focus are countries in which Metro already has presence to further strengthen our position or accelerate the score strategy in those countries. But in addition, we constantly monitor attractive opportunities in Europe where Metro is not present.
How do you go about acquire then the companies? What is the basic process?
I think you can divide the acquisition process in 3 phases. First, origination. Second is then the transaction phase. And the third one, after you have acquired, is what we call the integration phase. So let's start with the first one, the origination phase. So what we are doing is we are constantly screening the market for attractive targets. And some we approach proactively, but often we are also approached when the owners want to sell. Typical cases are succession issues of family-owned businesses, or when the owner thinks that for the, let's say, next growth stage, they are not the best owner anymore. And then comes to the transaction phase, where we cover many due diligences. So one is commercial, financial, we have a legal due diligence, tax. And in these due diligences, we basically assess the key aspects of how the company is set up, and we identify potential risks. And based on this analysis, we then conclude a valuation of the company. And then we go and negotiate with the sellers and try to agree on a price. And once we are successful with an acquisition, it comes to the integration phase. That means we integrate this company into Metro, and then we try to ensure that it aligns with all the Metro requirements, all the Metro standards that we have, and we provide support to the business. And I believe now it's fair to say that we have by now a good track record in integrating companies. So we have a lot of different functions here centrally at Metro AG who went through the process a couple of times. We learned through the process, and I think now we are in a good position to help the colleagues of the newly acquired companies to get along into Metro quite well.
And when you have been working so intensively on a company for weeks or even months, then you're convinced that it would be a good fit for Metro, and then the management board finally decides to acquire it. How does it make you feel?
Well, that's of course great, because I can tell you that transaction projects are quite intense. Yeah? So on the one hand, that's great if we are convinced to acquire an asset, but there were also cases where we went through a due diligence process and we recommended to the MAG board not to acquire the company because we have found things during the due diligence which made us step away. So I think all the decisions that we are taking and the things that we are recommending to the board, we always have the interest of the company in mind.
Okay, then, last question to summarize, Julius. How do you see the potential of the FSD companies overall and their further growth?
I think there's great potential for future growth in the FSD companies, but there should also be a large focus on improving profitability and cash flow. And I think there are also good examples that show that we can be a great owner. Take ProPro France, for example. When we acquired the business in 2017, the business was making 700 million. Nowadays, ProPro France is doing 1.3 billion in sales. So as Metro, as an owner, we could nearly double the business. And I think that shows that we can, once we acquire businesses, grow them organically quite well. And I'm also convinced that FSD companies will significantly contribute to reach the SCORE target of increasing FSD sales share to 33%. And moreover, we are continuously screening the market for attractive acquisition targets that fit in our strategy.
Also for our FSD specialists, they play a more and more important role, the own brands of Metro. In our year of own brand, we have set ourselves ambitious targets, and that's why this year there's not only a contest for our sales teams, but also the opportunity for each and every one of us to take part in a global competition. You have a brilliant idea on how we can make our own brands even more successful? With the Own Brand Super Idea Competition, Metro is looking for the most creative ideas to boost our own brand sales. The 4 best idea givers will be invited to present their concepts live to the Metro world at the One Metro Day on 16th of May. And the best thing is, the first prize is a ticket to Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas! Okay, so if you have enough ambition, passion and a great idea, then join in. Show the Metro world that you are a real sales machine. There's no limit. Wer will, der kann. Find the link to all further information and how exactly you can participate in the competition on United or simply in the show notes of this episode. Our FSD companies bring fresh fruit, meat, fish, fruit and vegetables to their hospitality customers. And you, Julius, bring us something different today, your sound souvenir. As always, it's a sound that you personally associate with something very special. Yeah, we've already had a quick listen, but now we are very curious to find out what it is. So, Julius, what sound souvenir have you got for us?
Wenn jemand Hilfe braucht, sind sie sofort bereit. Ryder und die
This is the title song of a series, no? Yeah? What is it?
Exactly, yeah. I brought the Paw Patrol theme song.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents with young children may have recognized the song. It's partly a joke in a sense that I'm a bit fed up with the song. But on the other hand, it reminds me also of playing with my youngest son, Anton, which is 3 years old. And he has the cars and all the playing pieces of Paw Patrol. And it's astonishing how creative children get when they are playing and when they are a bit in their world. And therefore, although I'm fed up with the song, it also reminds me of, let's say, good times with playing together with my son. And therefore, I also enjoy it.
Yeah, I really feel you. And not only because my son, his name is also Anton. Yeah, Julius, what an amazing sound and the great story behind it. Thank you for sharing it with us. And that wraps up today's episode of my podcast. A big thank you to you, Julius, for all the insights about our FSD companies. We've certainly learned a lot about them. Best wishes to you, Julius, and of course also for your family.
Thank you for having me, Bernd.
And to all our colleagues listening, thank you for joining us. If you have any topic requests or feedback on this podcast, feel free to email me or message me on Teams. Don't forget to subscribe to more podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Catch up on all past episodes and recommend more podcasts to all your colleagues. I'm looking forward to the next episode. Bye-bye and take care.